Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time we're looking at, well, technological globalization.
Oh, yeah.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah, it is.
And it can make you think of, all the ways we're connected these days online, especially. And, the world feels like it's getting smaller
Right.
all the time. But we're going to be taking a look at an article from the Spiritual Seek website today called Technological Globalization, or rather, How to Exchange the Means with the End.
Okay.
And so they take kind of a different look at things than maybe you would expect
It's
at
just,
the first glance at the title.
yeah.
So we're going to be exploring that.
Great. I mean, it is fascinating how often we just think of globalization as like this new thing,
Right.
But this article does a good job of reminding us that that desire to connect with people far away has been around like forever.
Yeah.
Like think about the ancient Silk Road,
Oh, yeah.
Across Asia and Europe
Yeah.
or the Roman Empire, just this vast network. Those are really early examples of globalization. And, a lot of them were driven by the same things we see today,
Oh, really?
trade, power the exchange of ideas.
I hadn't really thought of it that way.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
it's pretty cool.
That kind of puts things in perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think a lot of times we do just think,
Yeah,
oh, this is new. This is an iPhone internet thing.
right. Exactly.
But humans have always been pushing those boundaries.
Yeah.
It seems like the article even mentions the Greek and Roman Empire spreading their culture,
Yeah,
which obviously, there were some downsides to that.
of course.
A lot of conquest involved.
Right.
But, in a way, it did lead to this exchange of knowledge
Yeah.
that probably wouldn't have happened otherwise.
It's true. Yeah, it really highlights that globalization is not just good or bad.
Right.
It's got this long history and it can be good or bad, I guess.
Yeah.
Complicated.
Yeah, very much so.
So how did we get from those ancient empires to...
The globalization we
Right.
see today.
Well, the article kind of breaks it down into key stages, and it all starts, way back with the age of exploration
Okay.
in the 1500s.
Mm-hmm.
When they discovered America, that really kicked off this huge intercontinental trade.
Right.
Although a big part of that, unfortunately, was the slave trade.
Right.
But then the Industrial Revolution in the late 1800s,
Mhm.
that's when things really started to speed up.
Okay.
You had all these new technologies, the steam engine, the telegraph,
Right.
really just increased, the speed and the amount of trade and communication.
So that's what led to like a truly global economy.
Exactly.
Wow. Where people could move across continents more easily.
Absolutely, yeah. Seeking new opportunities.
And then, of course, the 20th century comes along
yeah.
and throws a couple of world wars into the mix.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those were definitely some setbacks.
Yeah.
But, globalization, it picked right back up afterward.
Okay.
But this time the world was kind of split,
Oh, yeah.
You had the capitalist West
Mm-hmm.
and the communist East, led by the Soviet Union.
Right. And the article even brings up that no globals movement
Oh, yeah.
that had popped up around the late 20th, early 21st century.
Mm-hmm.
And, they were pushing back against globalization.
Right.
And specifically some of the negative things that came with it.
Absolutely.
Especially from multinational corporations.
Yeah, they were concerned about things like, worker exploitation in developing countries, environmental damage, the loss of local cultures.
Right?
It's a good reminder that globalization isn't perfect.
Right.
Even with technology, driving it.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it automatically benefits everyone equally.
Exactly.
Which I guess brings us to
Yeah.
how technology is impacting our lives every day.
Right.
And the article makes this really interesting comparison between the automobile
Oh, yeah.
and the smartphone.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Because, the car completely revolutionized how we experience the world, right? Like travel, city design, how we interact with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And the article's argument is that smartphones are kind of doing the same thing today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like they're at the center of everything, work, socializing, even the way we think.
It's true. And it's kind of crazy to think about how, like, if you were on public transport, even like a decade ago,
Yeah,
people were reading or chatting or just looking out the window.
totally.
Now everyone's on their phone.
Yeah, everyone's glued to those screens.
Yeah. And the article really gets into how that's changing the way we behave,
Mm-hmm.
even in simple situations.
Right.
Like, I've definitely caught myself
Yeah, yeah.
scrolling through social media when I'm out with friends.
Oh, yeah, me too.
And then I'm like, oh, wait,
Oh,
I'm missing out on what's actually happening.
yeah, exactly. And that's a perfect example of the paradox the article is talking about.
Okay.
Technology connects us in ways that we never could have imagined before,
Right.
but that can also isolate us even when we're physically together. We end up, prioritizing those online interactions over real face-to-face ones.
Yeah.
And that's what leads to, what the article calls people being absorbed by their devices.
Absorbed. That's a good word for it.
Yeah.
So is there like a psychological component to
Oh,
this?
absolutely.
Like, why are we so drawn to these devices?
Yeah.
Even if it means missing out on real life.
Well, the article digs into the psychology behind that constant connectivity.
Okay.
It talks about the fear of strangers, the pressure to always be sharing and presenting ourselves online.
Right.
And then you've got the potential for negativity and, what they call herd mentality online.
Herd mentality.
Yeah.
That sounds a little creepy.
Yeah, well, it's basically, that tendency to just kind of go along with whatever the group is saying or doing,
Right.
even if it's harmful or it doesn't even make sense.
Okay.
And this gets even stronger online, because of anonymity and echo chambers.
Right.
Where you're basically only hearing from people who agree with you.
Yeah. So it's like you're not really thinking critically anymore.
Exactly.
Just going with the flow.
Right. And that's a big part of why you see so much, online bullying and aggression.
Yeah.
Because you forget that there are real people with real feelings on the other side of the screen.
Right. It's easy to forget that.
Yeah.
And this reminds me of how the article talks about COVID
Oh, yeah.
as a real turning point.
Definitely.
Because obviously we had to rely on technology so much more for work school, staying in touch with people.
Right.
I mean, it was essential.
Absolutely.
But didn't it also kind of make some of these negative trends worse?
Absolutely. I mean, the pandemic just accelerated these things that were already happening. The fear of strangers, the retreat into those online bubbles, and that feeling of being absorbed by our devices.
Yeah, it's like the pandemic gave us a preview
Right.
of a world dominated by technology.
Yeah.
And it wasn't all good.
No, not at all.
And it kind of gets to that central question that the article asks, has technology become the end goal
Yeah.
instead of a tool for a better life?
That's the big question.
Yeah. And that's something we're going to be exploring
Yeah.
further in part 2 of our deep dive.
Great.
We've covered the history of globalization, how technology is shaping our world,
Right.
both the good and the bad.
Exactly.
So what does it all mean?
Yeah.
How do we deal with this new reality? We're going to get into all of that in part 2.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.
So stay tuned.
So picking up, where we left off, the article kind of takes this interesting turn into philosophy.
Okay.
Brings in Immanuel Kant.
Oh, Kant.
Yeah.
I vaguely remember him from philosophy class.
Yeah.
Didn't he talk a lot about, like, treating people with respect and dignity?
Exactly. Yeah. One of his big ideas was that humans should always be treated as ends in themselves.
Okay.
Never as just a means to an end.
Right.
And the article kind of suggests that maybe we've lost sight of that, in our pursuit of all this technology.
So instead of technology serving humanity,
Right.
it's become the goal.
Yeah.
We're so focused on getting the newest gadgets, the fastest internet.
Right.
We don't stop to ask, like, what's the point of all this?
Exactly.
How is this actually making our lives better?
Right. We've become obsessed with the means, the technology itself, and we've forgotten about the end,
Right.
which should be, human flourishing.
Yeah, like we're on a treadmill.
Totally.
Just running and running, but we don't know where we're going.
Yeah. Good analogy.
And the article has this little self-assessment quiz
Oh,
to
yeah.
help you figure out, like, how addicted to tech you are.
Right.
And at first I was like, oh, this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
But some of the questions were kind of deep.
Really?
Yeah, like, could you live without a car?
Oh, wow.
Or do you check your smartphone every hour?
Yeah, it really makes you think about how much technology has taken over our lives and whether we're in control or it's controlling us.
And the article doesn't try to make the downsides of our tech obsession sound pretty either.
No, it doesn't.
It talks about how this constant need to share everything online can actually take us away from experiencing life.
Right. It's like we're so busy documenting our lives for social media that we forget to actually enjoy the moment.
Yeah. Are we really living, or are we just performing for an online audience?
Right. That's what the article calls it, living or sharing.
I mean, I know I've definitely been guilty of that.
Oh, me too.
You're at a concert or you see a beautiful sunset.
Yeah.
And the first thing you do is try to get that perfect picture.
For Instagram.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we value the virtual version of the experience more than the actual experience.
Exactly, and that ties back into those psychological challenges we were talking about.
Okay.
You know, the fear of stranger, the decline of real-world interaction. The article argues that these online bubbles we create,
Okay.
where we're mostly just talking to people who agree with us,
Right.
they actually make us more afraid of people who are different.
Oh, wow.
We kind of lose the ability to deal with the messy real world,
Yeah.
where you have to interact with all kinds of people.
Even the ones you don't like.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of ironic, isn't it?
It is.
We're more connected than ever,
Yeah.
but also more isolated.
In a way, yeah.
And the article is saying that real connection takes more than just digital interaction. It takes those face-to-face encounters,
Yeah.
shared experiences, actually being willing to engage with other people.
Absolutely.
And this is where I think the spiritual part comes in.
Okay.
I mean, the article's on a website called The Spiritual Seek,
Right.
and I hadn't really thought about it that way before.
Mm-hmm.
But it's almost like we've lost our sense of purpose,
Yeah.
our connection to something bigger than ourselves.
Right.
We're so distracted by all the digital stuff that we forget about our inner lives.
Yeah, they actually encourage readers to take some of the personality tests on their website.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they explore things like self-awareness,
Oh.
spiritual awakening, emotional intelligence.
So it's like they're saying the way to deal with this tech overload
Yeah,
is to understand ourselves better
exactly.
and our place in the world. Like maybe to rediscover our humanity in this digital age. We have to reconnect with ourselves.
Yeah,
And cultivate things like compassion and empathy and wisdom.
I think that's a really powerful perspective.
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, the article has given us a lot to consider.
Yeah?
The history of globalization, the impact of technology, and even the philosophical and spiritual sides of it all.
Yeah, it's complex.
It is very much so.
And it's not something we can just ignore.
No.
The choices we make now about technology are going to have huge consequences
Absolutely.
for ourselves and for future generations.
Yeah, so the big question is, where do we go from here?
Right. What are some practical things we can do to navigate this technological world in a healthy way?
That's what we'll be talking about in the last part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll look at the article's conclusion and discuss some strategies for reclaiming our humanity
Okay.
in a digital world. So stay tuned for part 3.
Okay, so we're back for the last part of our deep dive into technological globalization.
Yeah,
We've talked about a lot,
we have.
from ancient trade routes to like smartphone addiction and all that.
It's a lot to take in.
Yeah. But now let's look at how the article wraps things up
Okay,
and see what we can learn about navigating this whole new world we live in.
sounds good.
So the article really emphasizes that technology itself isn't the problem.
Right.
It's how we use it.
Exactly. It's like they say it's a tool.
Okay.
Like you can use a hammer to build a house.
Right.
Or you can use it to break things.
Yeah, it depends on the person using it.
It all comes down to intention.
So how do we make sure we're using all this technology the right way?
Well, the article suggests we need to be more deliberate about our choices
Okay.
and make sure they line up with our values.
Yeah.
You know, they remind us that technology should be a means to an end,
Right.
not the end goal.
Like, it's not about having the newest phone or the fastest internet just because.
Exactly, yeah.
It's about figuring out how tech can help us live better lives.
More meaningful, more fulfilling lives.
There was this one line that really stuck with me.
Oh, yeah.
It said, the moment that algorithms guide human choices and behavior, technology is no longer a means, but rather an existential end.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah, it kind of freaked me out a little.
I can see why.
It's like, are we just going to let machines make all our decisions for us?
Right. Are we losing some part of what makes us human?
Yeah. And are we going to be okay with that?
It's a valid concern for sure.
So what can we do about it?
Well, the article talks about the importance of unplugging, like actually taking breaks from all our devices and reconnecting with the real world.
Like a digital detox.
Yeah, exactly. They even challenge readers to try living without technology for a whole day.
Whoa.
No internet, no TV, no car even.
That sounds hard.
It is a challenge, but it can really change your perspective.
How so?
Well, it forces you to slow down, appreciate the simple things,
Okay.
and realize you don't need all that tech to be happy.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that.
And it helps you break those habits, you know? Like checking your phone every 5 seconds.
Oh, yeah. I'm totally guilty of that.
Me too. It's like a reflex.
Yeah, and the article also talks about being more mindful of how we use social media.
Right.
Like, are we actually connecting with people? Or are we just scrolling and comparing ourselves and feeling bad?
Yeah, social media can be great for staying connected.
Right.
But it can also be a breeding ground for anxiety and negativity.
So it's about being intentional.
Exactly, making sure it's actually adding value to your life.
And not just sucking up all your time. It seems like mindfulness is really the key here.
Yeah, being aware of how technology is affecting us.
Both the good and the bad.
And making conscious choices about how we want to use it.
Like anything else, moderation and balance are key.
Absolutely. The article actually ends with a quote from the ancient Greeks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it says, "Know thyself."
That's pretty fitting.
Yeah, because the best way to navigate this whole digital world is to understand ourselves.
Okay.
Our values, our motivations, what we're good at, what we struggle with.
And by doing that.
By developing that self-awareness.
Right.
Nurturing our inner lives and being more thoughtful about how we use technology.
Yeah.
We can make sure it's actually serving humanity.
Well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive.
Yeah, it has.
Technological globalization is clearly a powerful force with both amazing potential and some serious risks.
It's a double-edged sword.
But in the end, it's up to each of us to decide how we want to use it.
Absolutely. And like the article says, the goal isn't to reject technology altogether.
Right.
It's to use it wisely.
And create a future where we're all connected and compassionate and thriving.
Yeah. I think that's a future worth striving for.
I agree. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, everyone, and we'll see you next time.